Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Center for Spiritual Living Victoria Online. It's a pleasure to see you here with us again today. And if you care to join us in person on Sundays, as I've often said, we are in the Cook Street Village in Victoria. And if you go online to www.cslvictoria.org, you'll find all of the information there about how you can reach us. Today, my message is titled, Ain't Life Grand? And sometimes we might wonder during these strange times in which we live. But the thing is, we never quite know when something is going to make a big difference in our lives. It's going to change the course of our lives forever. And there's a story that I love about a little boy whose name was Sean Akron. And he had a little sister whose name was Amy. And one day they were playing in the bedroom, and their mother had just warned Sean that they should be quiet and that he should look after his little sister. He was 7 and she was 5. And because he was the big brother, he got to say what they were going to do. And he said they were going to play war. And they had bunk beds in the bedroom. And the two of them climbed up on top of the bunk beds. And Amy kind of grudgingly said that she would, okay, play war because he was the boss. And he had all of his G.I. Joes lined up and all of his war game material. And on the other side, she had her little princesses and stuffed toys and a stuffed unicorn, which she especially loved because she always longed to just be a unicorn and not to be Amy. And so they were about to begin, and Sean had his back turned to his little sister, and all of a sudden he heard this terrible thud, and he looked, and she had fallen. She hadn't been pushed. She had just fallen off the top bunk and landed on all fours. And it was one of those moments in time where everything was kind of slow motion. You know what it's like when many things happen in just a split second. And he knew that he was going to be in big trouble if she started to scream and cry. And he looked at her and he said, Amy, Amy, just look at what you've done. Just imagine, it's a miracle. You know, you've landed on all fours and you don't look like Amy anymore. You look exactly like a unicorn. You've become a unicorn. And Amy's little face was all contorted and, she was just preparing to start to scream and cry. And then he could see for a moment that she just stopped and she started to think about it. And the idea of being a unicorn, the unicorn that she'd always wanted to be, just took over. And she bounced up and got back on top of the bed, and she wasn't hurt at all. And Sean didn't realize it at the time, but he said that what he discovered was that was going to change his life forever. And any of us who are parents know the times when our children have been little and have perhaps fallen and skinned a knee or hurt themselves in some way, and we immediately do something to console them, and typically to take their attention away to the little bit that's hurt. And so I could really relate to this as I was reading about Sean's story. Anyway, Sean grew up and he wanted to go to Harvard. He wanted to study medicine. He wanted to become a psychologist. And his parents said they simply didn't have the money to send him to Harvard. There was no way. Well, Sean wasn't taking no for an answer, and he ended up getting a full scholarship. And off he went to Harvard. And there he was just in total heaven. I mean, here was this amazing, amazing school. He was just pinching himself. He could hardly believe that it was real. And he was so gloriously happy every day. But what he noticed around him was that a whole lot of the students at Harvard were pretty unhappy. They complained a lot. They complained about the workload. They complained about being away from home. They complained about food. They complained about their living quarters, complained about just about everything. Where Sean was just living in total delight because this for him was a dream come true. And he realized at that point that his classmates and all of the people that he met who were going to Harvard, almost all of them, basically didn't understand how privileged they were to go to that university. And so their lives were just full of all kinds of complaints, where Sean, on the other hand, knew every moment what a privilege it was for him. And he realized that the difference between them was that he was so grateful for where he was, And his gratitude had trained his brain to be happy every day that he was in this amazing place where his fellow students were just taking it for granted. Their parents had lots of money and, they could have probably gone to any school. And they never really thought about how grateful they might be. And Sean shared this with his friends who went to other schools who didn't go to Harvard because they too noticed that a lot of the people who were around Sean were not happy people. And as he was going through med school, he really thought about it a lot. And he thought, the world is just filled with all kinds of nasty things, but there are all kinds of good things too. And when we focus upon all that is bad, and this is a particular time to talk about this as we are, going into what's being called, a rise in the pandemic that we've been living with now for more than 8 months. It's a good time to really look at this. What are we looking at and how are we viewing things? Are we living in fear? Are we just sick and tired of it all? What are we thinking? What are we feeling? Because he said, when we're looking at the negative news, when we're looking at the bad stuff around us, we are training our brains to just look for the bad stuff. And when we're living in a place of gratitude for everything in our lives, then we are training our brains to look for the good. And our brains just scan everything looking for the good. And when they find the good, there's this excitement, there's this enthusiasm for life. And so this is a time that we need to do that. But back to Sean. Sean's little sister Amy ended up marrying somebody named Bobo. And Bobo went to Yale, and he too was studying medicine. And he was at a stage in his studies where he was studying infectious diseases, which would also be relative to today, I suppose. And Sean, in his course of studies, had just finished studying menopause. Anyway, his brother-in-law phoned him and was just desperately needing to talk to him. And he said, Sean, it's really terrible, but I think I have leprosy. And Sean said, what? And he said, well, I've got all of these symptoms. And he said, I think I have leprosy. And Sean just thought, wait a minute, you couldn't possibly be at Yale and have leprosy. And Sean couldn't relate to it at all because he'd just been studying menopause. And he also couldn't relate much to that because he was a guy. And so he kind of talked Bobo down and said, what you have is medical school syndrome. He said, we all are inclined to get it. He said, we read about the symptoms for various diseases, and then all of a sudden we feel like we have those diseases. Well, isn't that just looking at the negative side again? Instead of, in med school thinking, wow, I'm in med school, I'm a doctor, I can heal myself, I can heal the world. Just it's the language that we speak to ourselves, no matter what we might be doing. But in this case, with Sean and Bobo, it was medicine. So Sean was never interested in just being average. Sean always wanted to be absolutely great with anything that he did. He said, we should all be wanting to be the best that we can be. And when he graduated as a psychologist, he decided that he wanted to take positive psychology out into the world. As a little boy, he was 2 decades ahead of understanding what that really meant through his experience with Amy. But he began to speak to corporations. And he was invited more and more. He became more and more popular because corporations discovered that when he worked with their, I was going to say with their students, when he worked with their employees, that as they became happier, they were more productive. They were more creative. Not only were they happier at work, they were happier with their lives. They were happier at home. And so what Sean had to teach them was something that was really incredible. He was much in demand, and a boarding school in New England called the head of a boarding school in New England called him and asked him if he would come and speak during their wellness week, which was going to happen a month down the line. And he asked what it was about, and the woman who called him said, well, she said, we're focusing upon depression and anxiety and bullying and suicide. and drug abuse and eating disorders, all of those kinds of things. It's really important. And Sean said, not for me. He said, you're not having a wellness week, you're having a sickness week. And I love that. I love that he would take those things and would flip them into a positive, and would know how to respond to those things, and would not allow himself to be part of anything that was all about sickness, but instead was about wellness. It's kind of like, Mother Teresa saying she would not go anywhere um, to fight against war, but she would go anywhere to stand up for peace. It seems like a subtle flip, but in fact, it's not so subtle. It's really, really an important thing to consider. And so, what Sean basically told people that they needed to do was, first thing in the morning when they woke up, they needed to think about 3 things that they were grateful for that had happened to them the day before. And they had to be 3 new things. It couldn't just be the consistent thing that they're grateful for. It had to be 3 new things each day. They could also do it at night before they went to bed, but he suggested doing it in the morning. And then he suggested taking one of those things and journaling about it. Because when we take an idea or something, something that we see in our minds, and we write about it, we are training our brains. And what we are doing is we are reliving the experience. Our brains don't know the difference. Our subconscious doesn't know the difference. We're just training them over and over again to accept something that we're grateful for, something that we're positive for. And he said, when you do those 2 things and do them for 21 days straight, you'll find that everything starts to change in your life. You start to see things differently. And 21 days it's kind of a magic number for training ourselves to do anything, whether it's going to the gym, whether it's going for a bike ride every day, going on a diet, whatever. 21 days is the time that it takes for a habit to be formed. Now, he would say, if you miss a day, then you start from scratch. You do 21 days all over again, starting from there. And that's a great incentive to keep with the program, to keep on going. And he said, what will happen to us is, again, our brains will start scanning everything around us, scanning the earth for all that is good, rather than for the things that are bad, rather than for all of the bad news that come into our lives every day. And he says, in terms of our happiness, only 10% of it comes from what is around us, what's external, the things in our lives that most of us might think we need to be happy. He said 90% comes from within. That means that 90% comes from the inner work that we're prepared to do. And it's so important for us to realize this, to realize that, things like the absence of disease does not mean that we are healthy. The absence of depression doesn't mean that we're happy. These are, we can just kind of be middle of the road, just average, just going along, saying, well, life is okay. If somebody asks you how you're doing, saying, oh, not bad, not bad. How many times do you hear that when you say to somebody, how are you? And they say, oh, yeah, I'm not bad. But does that mean you're good? It's kind of like flatlining. There's a point where we truly, truly have to acknowledge that we have so much good around us. We have so many blessings around us. And we need to be exercising our brains so that we are training them. 2 minutes a day, Sean said, 2 minutes a day of expressing gratitude. That's hardly anything. 3 new things to be grateful for each day. 1 thing to journal about. Could probably get that done in 20 minutes, maybe fewer than 20 minutes. But it's exercising the brain. It's going to the spiritual gym, I like to call it. We're creating change in our lives, and we're creating important change in our lives when we do that. We start to believe that life is going to be better. We start to believe that we're just wide open to good experiences, and then good experiences start coming our way. He also suggests that when you turn on your email in the morning, first thing you do, before you read anything, Think of someone in your life and send that person an email telling them how wonderful you think they are. You know, isn't that a whole different thing to do? And imagine how the person feels at the other end. I remember Dr. Tom Costa, a really wonderful minister in Centers for Spiritual Living. He's now passed on. But Tom used to get up at 4 o'clock every morning, and he used to write 3 letters, handwritten letters each day, and put them in the mail. And they were letters of gratitude to certain people for things that he appreciated about them. I still love to get a letter in the mail rather than, well, I appreciate email too, but I love to get letters in the mail. There's something about the thoughtfulness of that. There's something about being able to hold the paper, really a tactile person, and being able to hold that and to look at it over and over again. It's very, very heartwarming. So we need to be kind. We need to be expressing our gratitude to people in our lives who are important to us. And we need to be training our brains the way we would train our bodies. No matter what that means, whatever it is that we would do to train our bodies to be physically healthy, we need to be training our brains the same way. And, going through the exercises that Sean recommends for this. And also, we need to release the negativity that we might have building up in us. If we have negative ideas, let them go and forgive. Just forgive. I make it sound so simple. I know it isn't always, but I'll tell you, it's a lot better to forgive and just let something go than to allow that person to have the free rent in your head and always to be there bothering you. It's upsetting. It can make a person sick. There's no need for it. Just let it go. Don't let it sit there accumulating cobwebs, or as Tom Costa used to say, when you're going through hell, don't stop and don't build a condominium there. We can get so stuck in things that we're upset about. Just let them go. Don't take things personally. Just allow them to just roll off and focus on something good immediately. Focus upon something good. Focus upon something that's happened in your life that you're really grateful for. It makes such a big difference to do that. And allow yourself to accept that you are a beautiful person, that you are kind, that you are compassionate, that you are loving, that you are generous. And tell other people that they are as well. I realize that I'm not always good at that, especially with people that I don't know. I don't often just compliment them on something they're wearing or a nice hairdo or, whatever it might be. And I was thinking about that because whenever I have, I feel so much better. And I know that the other person feels better too. And I was just thinking today of a young woman who used to work in a shop in Sydney. And I used to frequent that shop. I was probably there a couple of times a week. And I always looked forward to her waiting on me. Now, she had she had a face that would be considered disfigured. There was a problem with bone structure. And I tell you, every time that I went to her till, she was just, "How are you doing today?" A big smile, and so helpful in every way. She was just absolutely sunny, and always had something wonderful to say. And I realized that after I'd been there 2 or 3 times, that when I looked at her, all I saw was beauty. She looked physically beautiful to me, and she was so beautiful inside. And I said to her one day, you have no idea how much I enjoy having you look after me when I come into this shop. You are so beautiful inside and out. And I said, you make me feel so good with your own vitality and your own excitement and enthusiasm about life and your kindness, your genuine kindness. And she looked at me, we made eye contact, and she just looked at me softly for a moment, and then she said, I try. I really, really try. And I said, well, you do a really fine job. And she just lit up. But I lit up. I lit up because I had acknowledged something in her that I was feeling, sincerely feeling. And I wanted her to know that. And I resolved at that time that I would do a better job of this. as I go forward in my own life, because doing something good for somebody else, saying something good, makes you feel better about yourself as well. It's such an important gift that we can give people. So what we need to do is we need to be prepared to go the distance. What does that mean? That means we need to be prepared to go 21 days without interruption. After 21 days, it might just become a habit and we might continue it. But 21 days, go the distance and just see if it doesn't make a big change in your life. And let's know that what we're doing here is we're dealing with the infinite intelligence, the divinity, the God stuff that's in each one of us. And when we're doing that, miracles happen. Let us be open to miracles. Let us stay in that positive place, not in a negative place of saying, well, maybe for others, but not for me. If they happen to others, and if they happen to others, then why not me too? I'm wide open to them. I accept all of the goodness in my life. And so, again, we just need to awaken with gratitude in our hearts. Write down 3 new things each day for which we're grateful. 3 new things. Journal about one of them. If we're troubled about something that we need to release, then pray. Just go into prayer and just, beloved God, spirit, universe, whatever it is you want to call it, I surrender this to you. I absolutely surrender it. I choose happiness right here and right now. I choose a joyful way to live my life. I release anything that is negative in me right now. I release it. And if you need to sit in silence for a little bit and just think of something beautiful, do that. Remember what Rumi wrote. One of my favorite expressions of Rumi's: out there beyond what's right and what's wrong is a field, and I'll meet you there. What if we looked at every person in our lives that way? Never mind what we think they've done to us or what we might have done that might have hurt them. Instead, just go out into that field. Go beyond the moment of hurt, the moment of distress or despair, out into the field and meet the person there. It means meeting the divinity in each and every one of us. It's about acknowledging the oneness in all. When we do that, we are working with the infinite intelligence of the universe, and things in our lives will change. And out there in that field, let us lift up our faces into the sun and say, ain't life grand? And so it is. Thank you for being with us today. I'll be back here next week with a new topic and a new theme. The theme is going to be faith in challenging times. So I look forward to seeing you here, or else to meeting you in person at the Cook Street Village Activity Center, where we meet on Sundays, meditation at 10:30, and our full service at 11 o'clock. And if you want to know more about us, if you happen to be new to the site, then please go to www.cslvictoria.org, and you'll find lots of information there. And I'm available if you'd like to speak to me. My email is there and my phone number, and I would be happy to tell you more about it. Have a really wonderful week. God bless you, and so it is.